I first want to thank the producers of Pittsburgh Fashion Week for connecting the dots. I'm a believer in ABCD, always be connecting the dots, and it meant the world to me that they approached me for 3 specific reasons. One, I absolutely love working on the business development team here at TrueFit, where we are working with companies ranging from startups to larger enterprises looking to build brand new software products. And these products are having a positive impact on the world. I also have a background in the arts, musical theater, film, modeling, and I cannot wait to model for one of the designers tomorrow night. And being held by our sponsor, PPG Industries at the PPG Winter Garden, one of my favorite peaceful places to go to in the city. And finally, I was positively overwhelmed to learn about McGee Women's Research Institute Foundation being a sponsor for Pittsburgh Fashion Week as well, because a couple years ago, I had a health scare with a tumor in my breast, and I just was in awe of the surgeon there because she not only helped me through the diagnosis and removing the tumor, but she also said, "Hey, I noticed that you're also a dancer and you must be on stage a lot with acting and modeling, and I'm gonna clean up this scar for you so that whether you're wearing a leotard or a brand new collection for a fashion designer, you can walk confidently on stage." So thank you to McGee for your support this week, because it is your efforts that I can confidently walk on stage. And with that all said, to have all of these aspects of my life come together tonight, I'm thrilled to welcome these incredible ladies. And I would first love to give a round of applause for these ladies in business and the arts. I've asked the panelists to please introduce themselves, and we are going to start with Amanda.
Great, thank you. So, hello Pittsburgh, my name is Amanda Cosco. I'm here to you today from Toronto, Canada, and I am a fashion futurist and the founder of Electric Runway. So I started off as a journalist, focused on the intersection of fashion and technology, covering wearables and technology on the body, and then evolved that interest into a brand called Electric Runway, which is my company, and Electric Runway focuses on 3 main areas. So we do thought leadership, so speaking at events like this. We do consulting and curation, so curating, museum exhibits, small and large. And we also do media in the fashion tech space, so covering how different technological innovations are disrupting the fashion industry. So that's me, and that's Electric Runway.
Hi, my name is Gemma Sole. I'm the co-founder of Nineteenth Amendment. I'm here with Amanda, co-founder. 19th Amendment is an on-demand pre-selling and production platform for independent brands of all sizes to pre-sell garments and have them made in the US in about 4 to 6 weeks. Basically, the underlying technology that we have is a very user-friendly PLM, or production lifecycle management system, that really allows people to get to the point where their products can be made by decentralized manufacturers all over the US. So we launched in 2014. We were first startup to partner with Macy's Inc. We did that in 2014 to do total inventory-free retailing with them. We've since partnered with Lord & Taylor, Microsoft, Dell, and a couple other media and retail partners to basically allow these brands to sell without inventory and bring new products, new brands, new great designers, 3 of which will be on the runway tomorrow, and who we have here, to pre-sell basically from the runway. So we're excited.
Hi, I'm Dee Schlotter from PPG Paints, and I work at PPG down the street. Global company, also in architectural paints, aerospace, automotive, consumer products like appliances. We do coatings all over the world and for more services out there than you can imagine. And you might wonder, why am I on this panel? But the runway influences our color choices for all of our different business units. It starts on the runway, and we look at it very seriously as influencing the paint colors and coatings colors we have for everything from a hospital to a prison to a residential home. So I've been working for PPG for a long time. Started when I was very young, but and I'm part of also the global color marketing squad that does trends all across the world for all the different business units as well.
Well, ladies, welcome. Welcome to Pittsburgh. And you got to walk down the street, didn't you?
I did.
I'd love to first start with, we're anxious to learn about what trends, whether fashion or technology or color marketing, that you are most excited about as far as disrupting the fashion industry.
Should we go down the line again, or?
Is that you keep putting?
Okay.
Start.
Well, our answer is clearly see now, buy now in ways. But generally, or more broadly than that, I think quick turn and on-demand retailing. On-demand is everywhere now. I mean, you guys probably get your food on demand, you get entertainment on demand. So really for us, we see manufacturing of carbon sew garments as well as other goods local to the end consumer as being the next step in basically consumerism. And so that's what we're most excited about. And of course, what you need for that is technology to connect the dots. So,
Amanda, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, totally. I think that reshoring is definitely happening. I totally agree. I've seen it before my eyes. I don't think it's necessarily trends that are disrupting the industry. Like when you say trend, you think of like a certain type of sleeve or like, a color. I think it's more innovations that are disrupting the industry. I just did a talk in the Philippines on the 7 key technologies that I think are disrupting the future of fashion. So I'll tell you them now and then we can delve deeper into them later on, if I can remember all of them. So the first one was the smartphone, really simple, straightforward. The second was augmented reality, virtual reality, automation, artificial intelligence, IoT, so Internet of Things, and the 7th one was biotechnology. So it's the 7 trends, I think, or the 7 innovations, I should say.
I would say technology absolutely influences the paint industry as well. So you can order your swatches, large swatches like this dress. They become in flat squares though, not like that. You could create something like that. You can get those online. You can also go on and do a visualized picture of your space and paint that online before you start painting. But I think the biggest thing is the interconnectedness of all of everybody worldwide. So when we first started doing color of the year, like for paint, 7 years ago, there used to be big arguments between the US and France and China. So when our teams all came from all over the world, we used to fight a lot about what the true color of the year was. And now, because there's so much shared information that everybody's looking at pretty much the same thing, that everyone comes to the same conclusion at the end of our big workshop meeting in January. So we all end up on the same color of the year, which that was not the case several years ago.
You each mentioned at one point in your answer technology. So how has technology specifically impacted your career to get where you are today?
Okay. Well, I guess, where can I start this? I'd say we're kind of part of the generation that first had technology. So I'll say I was one of the first people invited to Facebook. So that kind of defines where where I started, how old I am maybe. But What I would say is it wasn't necessarily maybe technology for me, but more entrepreneurship. So I graduated from the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York. I started a company right out of school there with the Kauffman Foundation for Entrepreneurship. Got recruited down to do strategy consulting for Booz Allen Hamilton for the Department of Defense in information systems. So did that for a year, which is technology, but it's probably not the cutting edge of technology. So while I was doing that, I saw what startups were doing and basically saw how much faster you could move with maybe less bureaucracy and kind of more nimble teams. And that kind of led me to look at industries where maybe there were legacy processes or legacy systems that needed kind of refining. And I met Amanda, my co-founder, who has a background in fashion and design, and we wanted to kind of approach the whole ecosystem of fashion, and we kind of inserted technology into what was a very untechnological process and applied the ideas of startups, so basically minimum viable products, to fashion. So how can you do the most with the least amount of cash, time, resources, and 19th Amendment was it. Should I go this way first?
Sure. As far as technology for PPG, I know one of the things that helps me do my job the most, because I'm older than you and I definitely started with faxing versus texting and everything, but we belong to WGSN, which is a global styling network site that goes to every runway show in the world, every consumer electronics show, every automotive show. So we get to see daily every single thing that comes through there, which is a ton of information, a ton of content that we're able to apply to our jobs every day. We do a lot of geographic studies on color, on what colors people prefer in different parts of the world, and having that information like daily is super helpful for us in getting the right colors to the right customers.
Yeah, I would say social media, again, to echo Gemma, is the thing that really allowed me to become a mediapreneur. So traditionally, if you were going to be a fashion journalist or work in media, then you have to go through traditional outlets, which I did early on in my career. But the great thing about YouTube, about Twitter, about Facebook is that you can leverage these platforms to brand yourself and to put your voice forward. And I also was establishing my brand at a time where wearable technology was just the beginning of the hype cycle, and it was looking for a voice. And even though it had a lot of people talking about it, there wasn't a lot of people talking about the fashion aspect of it as well, and that intersection between fashion and technology. So I would say like the internet and social media is the most key technology for my career.
And I'd love to take this question a step further. With regards to social media, I see where it is so helpful for businesses to break into the market and prove to their industries that they are innovative. But how has it also potentially hurt whether your company or you as an individual, and how do you deal with that?
Well, I think social media, like any technological tool, it's like a double-edged sword, so it depends on how you use it. So there's definitely benefits and there's definitely downsides to it. Specifically with the recent Facebook information that was released, with data privacy and things like that. So I think that there's a lot of concerns around that area, as well as around like health and well-being, because we're just saturated with images all the time. I think that's where you're going with that question. Yeah.
Yes, I've got a couple of fun stories, but I'd start by saying, I'm kind of echoing what Amanda was saying. Social media right now is in kind of a precarious place, and also as a young brand, the platforms have matured to a point where you really don't get the amount of exposure, that you used to get 5 years ago. Just like the organic exposure isn't there anymore. And it's unfortunate, but it means that you just have to actually get out in front of real people who are not. So platforms are maybe less compelling and less a driver of growth especially for small brands than you'd expect. They still do a lot, but it's very much, the algorithms have changed. For us, a fun story related to social media is more about kind of controlling your message and your your marketing a little bit because you're able to be out there all the time. You have to really think about how that works. So, like for example, one example that we have, election year, our name is 19th Amendment. It was picked in 2012. So, but because of the name, we kind of got tagged incorrectly in things, and just like had people who didn't know anything about our companies, say things. So, and of course we leveraged kind of that messaging as well, but that was kind of an interesting example of, who owns the handle really matters sometimes. Yeah, so it's just a fun story.
I would say we get a lot of comments on social media that we have to respond to, and sometimes people that don't know the whole story or take things out of context, and it still feels like you can't do anything discreetly anymore, like everything is out there. But we see it as just this oversaturation of material and constantly being bombarded with images that you don't even sometimes want to see. So I always compare it to, like, when you're walking, like, you don't have these moments of in between anymore. Like it used to be, you would walk out of the building and wait for somebody to come pick you up from work, and you would stand there and just let the day go away. Nobody does it anymore. Everybody's looking at their phone and constantly being interrupted with other things, like cats dancing or something. Like it's something crazy, like that you didn't even want to watch, and you're constantly being distracted and interrupted. So we've lost that space in between things, and that's why you're seeing so many people crave white and gray, and they just want this just non-distracting colors. They just want everything around them to be like non-distracting, because everything is so distracting here. And those moments of in between are really important for creativity. Like you can't be creative if you're constantly being interrupted and distracted. So from a paint color world, it ends up being where we see a lot of white going on walls.
This really leads well into this next question. You each mentioned the constant distraction from social media notifications, and this is a common discussion we have at TrueFit with building products, particularly in the wearable space. Oftentimes, when you have a device connected to the human, is that helpful in them constantly being notified of their health? And can we make that health data look sexy? And is it actually helping? And then there's also the side of retail, and how can we use wearable technology to boost sales? Would love your thoughts on what is a wearable to you, and how do you think it will impact your future?
Microphone to the wearable So yeah, wearable technology is technology worn on near inside the body. And a couple of years ago, that was a Fitbit or an Apple Watch, and there were really like simple definitions of what that meant. But what we're seeing now with virtual reality and with smart fabrics that actually have technology embedded right into the fiber, there are more opportunities to quantify yourself than ever before. And this is talking beyond what the Apple Watch can do. And so I think that idea of biodata is very interesting. It's interesting for the work that you do at TrueFit. It's interesting for the implications of taking control of your own health data as a consumer. What I hope is that it doesn't become all about just the quantified self, which is this term that is, talking about all this biodata being captured by our devices. Because I think that, and this is where I differentiate a wearable from fashion technology, is you're approaching it with a concern for aesthetics when you're talking about fashion technology, and you're approaching it with a concern for the human body. So it can be about expression and not just quantification. So clothing has always protected us, and I think that in the future it will continue to do that. So wouldn't it be great if your jacket could heat up so that you don't have to feel the cold of the winter? I think that it's going to continue to do that. But it's also something fashion has always connected us and allowed us to express ourselves. So as things move forward with wearables, I hope that it's not just about how many steps did I take today. It becomes more about self-expression and individualization, and we see that with some of the products on the market. Something that comes to mind is a mood sweater that was made by a designer in San Francisco. It's called the Gur Mood Sweater, and it basically reads emotion from the palm of your hand and lights up a color depending on the emotion. So red means you're nervous, and blue means you're tranquil. And it's biomedia. It's like wearing it's like a mood ring, but collar. So you might think to yourself, well, why would I want something like that? But it's actually being used in couples therapy and in children with autism to help better understand their emotions. So I see lots of directions where wearables can go, but I just hope it doesn't become all about like that step counter kind of movement.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think the benefit of wearables is definitely in the medical space and the patient-related medical space. So how can you get more proactive patients? How can you deliver better medical care? I'll give you the answer from the fashion side, which is basically that we honestly, you don't see very many brands in like the pure fashion space doing much with wearables. There's a couple of reasons why. Usually they just kind of shy away from technology. The second is a lot of the materials that are more specialized or technologically advanced are really expensive, and some of their distributors don't give that out to small brands. They control very much who they give that out to. And so what we see is you don't see very many startup brands, startup companies leveraging, I would say mainly tech fabrics, because that's more the space that they play, just because of that cost issue. And so when I think about wearables, when they first came out, they were very sexy topic, but I think they haven't quite reached their product market fit in terms of where they're going. People quite haven't gotten used to them. Even like the Apple Watch, I'm pretty sure adoption isn't quite where Apple thought it would be. So there's a lot of interesting things that are probably going to happen in that space. I would be impressed to see it happen in fashion first, but it will probably happen more, come up through the medical patient side. But then, of course, there's also the data issues, so that's another panel. There you go.
True. So as far as wearables with paint, it would be more on color and looking at how color can be smart. So the psychological appeal of color, where red stimulates your appetite, which is why most logos for eating places and restaurants are red and orange and yellow, because they stimulate your appetite, versus blue, which decreases your appetite. So if you're looking to lose weight, you can paint your kitchen blue. But there's a lot of like the colors, like soft pinks, a compassionate color. There was studies done where if you paint prison pink, will that like decrease the amount of anger and things happening in prisons? Like there's all different colors that you can layer on, and colors can become metaphors for what you feel in a space. So when you walk into a space and you feel it, like they've got the color right because it's right for that space and it's right for that user. So that's where colors can be smart, like a wearable.
Dee, if you could hold on to the mic, I'd love to start with you on this one. You each also mentioned about thinking about the next generation, and would love to hear your thoughts on what do you think is motivating the next generation of fashion buyers, particularly from the color perspective.
So I guess that if we're talking real demographic generation, because Generation Z that's coming forward, and we just got a lot of requests for what colors to paint the dorms and the common areas for this new generation coming to college, and we're seeing them as being a very purposeful driven generation. They've seen a lot of what the millennials have done, and they want a lot of purpose in their life. Right? They're like, so as far as what we're seeing coming. The biggest influence to me, I mean, nature has been driving trends for so long, but it's the real connection to nature that we're just seeing pushed further along as far as color goes and design goes. So designers and architects right now, there's a new accreditation called WELL, and it's all about the people instead of the building space itself. How do you make the people healthier in the space that they're using? So everything from vending machines not having anything that has more than 10 grams of sugar to making sure people can walk around the office every hour instead of sitting so long. And so all of that influences what colors you use in the space too. So the biophilia, which is bringing nature indoors, goes across every single segment that we see in building. So from healthcare, it's proven that if a room faces a nature setting, that they can give up to 30% less pain medication to that patient. There's all kind of research being done in education as far as how far is a school away from a park. Like there's all those things. And so that all influences what colors go on the wall when you start bringing nature in and how you create that space.
Thank you.
Nature.
Now, repeat the question for you, Gemma. From your perspective, what do you think is motivating the next generation of fashion buyers?
Do you mean like consumers or retail buyers?
Let's go with the retail buyers.
Okay, cool. Well, we don't work with too many retail buyers, but we do, just because wholesale is kind of changing a lot, so there aren't really as many buyers as there used to be. In the larger retailers, what you see is there's a lot over time, and you guys have probably noticed this as you've gone into stores, things start to look a lot similar. Very similar. There's a lot of black dresses reoccurring with like maybe a different neckline. And a lot of that is just because as those companies became more data-driven and those roles became very risk-averse, they only wanted to buy things that sold very well last season. Unfortunately, the nature of fashion is new and kind of unique, but because the buyers are in this position where they're trying to act off of previous year's data, and they don't want to lose their jobs for buying like 500 yellow dresses that don't sell, they tend to choose products that are very safe. And so actually one of the reasons that we were able to work with larger retailers like Macy's and others is that they wanted a way to basically offer new and unique product from new designers that no one had ever seen before, which in a merchandiser's business is like gold, but without the risk of holding that inventory, right? So there we de-risk the problem of the buyer because they don't have to, their budget isn't on the line, but they can basically curate and choose to offer which designers they want to. So that's kind of the trend we see in retail buying, is that, they've got a lot of risk and weight on their shoulders from inventory, which hasn't been moving as quickly as it used to. And so we're trying to make it a little bit easier for them. But on the consumer side, I think what you see is, we were talking about this earlier, but the desire for new, unique things, for things with a purpose, for great brand stories. And I think when we see new designers, a lot of them have all of these things, but it's always usually the product always wins. So someone has to fall in love with the product as it is alone, and then all of those other things just add to the value prop and the selling proposition. If you don't have a great product, that's, nothing else is really gonna help you, or if it does help you, it will help you once and you won't get that repeat customer. So that's kind of what we see.
Yeah, I would echo Gemma in saying that data is driving fashion buyers right now. A fashion buyer or someone who with that role would have to go around to different fashion weeks around the world and look at the trends and be able to go back to their team and say, okay, like maroon is going to be really hot this fall and everyone's going to have a leopard print coat. Those jobs are becoming so few and far between now because of social media. And so there are algorithms and softwares out there that can predict within 98% accuracy how much inventory you need to order in order to make your sales and in order to generate the profit that you're looking to generate. So the human element is being taken out of it a little bit when it comes to fashion buying, and it's becoming more focused towards data. And there's more data, there's more fashion data out there than any time before, because Pinterest, because of Instagram. And then at the same time, I think that the reverse is happening that we used to see in terms of where the trend comes from. So it used to be that fashion trends were created on the runway and kind of had this trickle-down effect to the rest of us common folk. And now we're actually seeing, because of Instagram, the trends are working the other way up, and it's street style influencers that are instigating the trends and wearing them first as influencers. And then the larger fashion houses will catch on. So you're kind of seeing that reverse effect from a consumer perspective.
I'd love to dig deeper into what you mentioned about influencers. And this can apply to each of you. Have you found them helpful with your business today? And do you foresee them still being helpful in the future?
Well, so Electric Runway, people often approach me as an influencer in the fashion tech space, and we also work with influencers. So I see both sides of it. I think that it's something that's not going away. I think that social media has become a platform for people to build their personal brands, and they're good advocates for brands. So I don't see it going away in the future.
I'm kind of two minds on this subject. We've worked with influencers in the past. We actually have a program called the Stylist Closet. So brands who participate on our platform can keep samples of their garments in New York, should they choose, for stylists, celebrities, etc., to come and pull them free of charge for the stylist, which is awesome. Just as a way to get brands kind of out there. So kind of tying back to the social media question, I think influencers in the beginning of social media was very authentic, and you actually could see numbers and growth. Now you're getting to the point where basically the influencers are becoming like micro agencies, and the market's just very, very saturated. So, and there's a lot of ways to inflate numbers, followers, likes, etc. You guys have probably, again, this is another panel, but you guys have probably heard all this. So we always advise brands not to spend money there if they can avoid it. We find the best connections are actually made authentically. So if someone just, again, really loves your product, it speaks to them. Maybe they're a sustainable advocate and you make your earrings out of recycled plastic. And it's a connection because you have a shared purpose. And there's not necessarily a monetary transaction, or maybe it's personal when you gift them something, but where you start to see it not work is when influencers start to require certain payment, they don't always deliver, it's hard to get those metrics, and then also just a lot of, so the topic of trends coming from Instagram too is always kind of debatable now, because almost every large brand in the consumer space pays many influencers now to promote products. They have to indicate it on their Instagram. They're essentially ads, right? So I think you'll see that they'll become less effective. They're kind of a new magazine almost. You gotta pay for it somehow. But so it'll be interesting. So I wouldn't suggest for emerging brands to start doing that. I would just suggest connecting authentically, which sounds easier than it is, but yeah.
I think that's totally true. I think we've gone to the other side of the pendulum where like consumers were not wanting to listen to big companies because they were just trying to market their products to them. And then the influencers came along and people were saying, wow, these people are just loving this because they love it. And so everybody went this way with all the influencers, and now they are getting paid by big companies to say what they like. The only way that influencers work well with us is that they are collected style, especially when choosing paint color, which is not an easy thing to do, like to choose colors for your wall. And so when you have an influencer, it helps give confidence to some of our customers. We just signed on Leanne Ford, who's actually from Pittsburgh and restored by the Fords, so PPG now is with Leanne Ford, and she has a particular style that a lot of people like and want to mimic. So from picking the 80 whites that we have out there, and she has 3 whites that she likes, now we've given those customers more confidence by showing them a style that people want to emulate. So that's the only way where I think influencers do help, is that they they help have a style that some people just want to go to, and makes it quick and easy for them to get that look.
Can I make a quick caveat? I should have also said that there are influencers that are more like curator celebrities, right? So like Gwyneth Paltrow, she's basically an influencer now that's selling her own, or rather a marketplace. She's a marketplace now. And there's Kim Kardashian, there's all the Kardashians.
Yeah.
They'll get you a return. Sure, you'll have to pay a lot for them. So there's kind of like this like Olympus of influencer that will deliver results. But they're often very unaffordable, out of everyone's reach, clearly. But then actually what you're also seeing now is what they're realizing is they can actually make more money by developing their own brands, so leveraging private label houses to create their own makeup lines. So it's going to be, I think you're actually going to see more of that. So you're going to see these heavy hitter influencers basically starting to create their own brands and outsource all of the logistics to somebody else because they can afford to do that. So keep an eye out for that, and then they can't, you can no longer pay them to promote your beauty product because it conflicts with their own. So
Yeah, totally. To add on to that as well, like Kylie Jenner is set to be the world's youngest billionaire from selling Kylie Cosmetics direct to consumer. Like Kim Kardashian, her contour kit sold hundreds of millions of units within the first 3 hours because she can cut out the middleman. She can cut out retailers and she can cut out traditional media. So those two industries are seeing a hard time right now, traditional media and traditional retail, and that's because what is their role in this new economy that we're living in?
Oh, and on that note, very excited to ask you this final question before we open up to Q&A. What is on the horizon for you? I think this can be interpreted one of two different ways. Maybe more personally as an individual and what next steps you'd like to take there. Or it could be next steps with your team, your business, podcast. Would love to hear what's coming up for you.
Okay, so I'm currently writing a book on the 7 key technologies shaping the future of fashion, and I'm giving a presentation in Finland on specifically virtual reality and augmented reality and how these technologies are going to impact fashion and beauty, and I'm super excited about this area. We have an upcoming podcast with some of the sponsors and participants of Pittsburgh Fashion Week, so you can look for that on Electric Runway's podcast. And just stay tuned to our YouTube channel for our different adventures around the world.
Cool. I want to go. Well, first, we're most excited for the runway tomorrow because we have 3 amazing brands, King Road, and Mad Recital, who are sitting right over there. They're actually live now to shop on 19th Amendment before the runway. So you should just go to shop.19thamendment.com and you can find them in the brands list. Going off of that, we're also talking to a lot of bigger kind of media and retail partners to be doing more of these inventory-free experiences that often revolve around entertainment. So whether it's a fashion show or TV show or something like that. And we can't talk about stuff yet, but we're excited for that too.
Excited for the show tomorrow. I think it's going to be really great. So I'm super excited to see the new wares. And then we're just heading to New York to do some media interviews for paint. And we're also working on a universal color palette. So PPG manufactures coatings in 40 countries. And so we're trying to get one huge palette of like 15,000 colors that represent our entire world of color, and being promoted out to architects and designers so they can get the same color whether you're in Paris, Shanghai, or Pittsburgh.
Exciting. And amazing to think we're also just 24 hours from the show tomorrow night.
Real walking.
Yes. Confidently, thanks again to McGee. Would love to open up the floor now to everyone here. If you have a question, whether for the entire panel or an individual, please feel free to raise your hand. See the first one back.
You can hear me. I'm just curious with the lack of inventory in your marketing model with Electric Runway, why are we not seeing more larger sizes in the marketplace for women? And is the way that the fashion industry is working now, with the like project in Macy's, for instance, is that actually restricting sizing? Because you have, you know,
No, that's a great question. So, the answer I'll give it actually starts with education. So most designers that are trained on like a size 2-4 form. So, and actually, I didn't know this because my background isn't in fashion, but construction for garments for like plus size is quite different than below plus size. So you actually technically, from a technical knowledge standpoint, have to know how the difference in construction. And so the problem is in school is a lot of designers who are learning technical design aren't being trained on that. It's maybe a specialty, they have to request it. And so a lot of designers will graduate from school and they won't necessarily know how to do it. They'll want to offer it, but it becomes an additional cost or an additional requirement, and they have to think about their garment in a totally different way. So I would say that it actually starts at the education level. Yeah, that's the best answer.
Yeah, and just to clarify, Electric Runway doesn't sell products. We're more of a media company. 19th Amendment does sell products. With the plus size question, I think that in the future, that term will be irrelevant. I think it'll just be your body size, because I think the way things are going is customization. And so you'll have a scan of your body that has your exact measurements, and you'll be able to shop and have clothes made perfectly for you, and they'll be manufactured on demand or 3D printed in the future. So the idea of, sizes across the board is going away, and I think it's more becoming about personalization, which I think is ultimately a good thing.
Do you have a question? Sarah?
I have one. So I'm curious to know, or to get your thoughts on how you think any fashion and tech collaborations might help with sustainability, since that's a huge issue in the fashion industry.
Yeah, sure. So I think that with fashion and technology, the sustainability component comes in because right now we're on this mass production model with fast fashion. We have clothes that are manufactured ahead of time, for people who get them 6 months after they show on the runway. And it's not a sustainable model. So with innovations like what 19th Amendment is doing, you're more closely connecting your consumer and your manufacturing base, and then you're saving this time and energy of things having to be shipped overseas and samples sent. I also think that the sustainability component comes in when you think about the new materials that are being developed. So, we're seeing like spider silk being used to develop materials instead of, something that perhaps doesn't biodegrade as easily. With 3D printing and, the way that it's evolving, right now it looks a lot just like hard plastic, but eventually once you're able to print an actual fabric, when you're done with that dress, you can use that filament again for a different dress. You don't have to put it in the compost or put it in the landfill. So I do think that where there's innovation, there is a sustainable mindset, because that's just where the future of fashion has to head. We probably all know that fashion is the second largest polluting industry in the world, and it needs to change, and so that's where tech, I think, can really help fashion.
Thank you. So Amanda highlighted some of the reasons why we're a sustainable model. Basically, a lot of the reason why we started in the US was because of those reasons. So not only the reduction in time and cost to develop, but because we can develop product close to the end consumer, we save on shipping, so no freight. It's a huge pollutant. We encourage designers to only make what sells, so they're not making excess inventory. Everything's made with purpose. It's made for you. It's not custom fit, but it's made just because you ordered it. And so those are kind of the easy ways we're starting to reduce waste. I think, kind of a little bit contrary to what Amanda was saying, you won't see too much innovation in fabrics just yet, just because they're so expensive, hard to get, unless you're a really big brand like a Nike or a Gap or a Levi's and you have the funds and you care enough to invest in that. But hopefully those will become available to smaller brands soon. And then we'll start to see kind of more interesting stuff, but unfortunately, polyester will always be cheaper, sort of thing. So until someone, the research and development kind of gets us to a point where those costs change a little bit, I think we'll continue to see more innovation on the process side versus the fabric side, which is fabrics and logistics involving agriculture around fabrics and dyes. Is kind of just a whole other subtopic.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yes. Hi, Tara McBride from Love Nothing More. Thanks for being here today. You started talking about influencers, and I think that you all hit on some really good points. You're right on, and I appreciate your point of view on that. Do you have a hot take on a shift away from these massive influencers to micro-influencers? It seems to be sort of like the topic of the moment, that if you have fewer than 10,000, then it's a more worthwhile endeavor to engage with them. So just personal opinions about that, or on behalf of your brand. Or if you don't have an opinion, that's okay too.
I mean, it's hard because we see a lot of, I would call like career influencers, like.
That's what they do.
Yeah, but they don't necessarily do it well. They just they're maybe really pretty and they look really nice in clothing and they've gotten a great following. It's more of an aesthetic thing. It's not really, and they have a lot of other people that follow them. They're usually other influencer bloggers who also want to, grow their following. So those types of people, we don't really see much. They're great for awareness. So if you want brand awareness, it's great. Don't expect conversions on products. Where you see conversions on products more is if it's like an influencer who maybe isn't trying to be an influencer, if that makes sense. So maybe it's I don't have a great example of this.
Like a YouTuber recommending a product because they really.
Yeah, not even a YouTuber. Maybe it's a famous journalist who found a really cool pen they like, and they say something, this is a horrible, they found a really cool app to save other articles and they share it, and because it's authentic to their work process, they probably have a lot of other people that follow them that are interested in that. You'll see conversion on that. But in the fashion space, especially, it's very fluffy and, so it's harder to find people that really can convert unless it's, especially on what we primarily work with, which is kind of contemporary fashion, contemporary price fashion.
How about Serena Williams with her compression catsuit at the US Open?
Ooh, I don't know.
That tech fabric, there was tech fabric in there.
Yeah, didn't it get banned?
No, it did.
Yeah.
But it did make a huge splash.
I mean, I feel like she made it even more splashes, so that story maybe got washed out a little bit. But that's kind of a whole other thing, because if it gets banned, then none of the tennis people are going to buy it, are they? So that's a great question. I don't have any data on that, but yeah.
I think what you said before too, authenticity always wins in the end. So if it's not authentic, people can see right through it. And people right now, especially you see Gen Z coming, because they're so seeing that they grew up with everything, they can see that someone's fake right away. And I think that the authenticity piece is really important, that they're true artists, and I think those are the ones that will win, have a long run.
Of course, and we do have time for that.
I have a million questions. Okay, so I think guys, Dee and Amanda, you guys touched on this before, but I'm curious to know more about how our unconscious thoughts influence our fashion, because I think, especially for Pittsburgh, fashion has traditionally not been a huge industry here, but I think people think about it less than they should, because obviously like our feelings affect what we put on during the day. So I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that topic.
Yeah, so there's a lot that influence your color preferences. We always say color preference is select or subjective, but it's not random. So why you like certain colors is based on your memories. Like you could have, we just were having a conversation about this earlier. Like you could,
Black and yellow.
yeah, well, or you could have had a room that was painted yellow when you were a child and you had a terrible childhood. Now you hate yellow. Like I mean, lots of things that can add up to that. But the other influencer of that, so you have your personal memories, your preferences, your geographic, because it's different in Pittsburgh. It's more gray than in Miami. So the colors shift there a lot. Like colors look really good in Miami, do not look good here for exteriors, for example. And then the whole societal influences piece. So like what's happening in the world makes you crave certain colors at certain times. I mean, that's what we see with the runway. I mean, if you get a color right because, it's reflecting what's happening in the world because you want that color. So, we go back to 9/11 even, like the two colors that bubbled to the surface, out of all the colors out there were soft pink and chocolate brown. And they were all over fashion and quickly came into home decor, and soft pink's a compassionate color and chocolate brown is a grounding cocoon color. So those colors were all over after that happened. In 2008, like all the new home construction interior walls went from off-white to gray because of the recession. And they've been that cool gray for 8 years. Now it's finally shifting to a warmer gray and more colors coming. So you're looking like at the hotels, because the hotels is the runway for interior designers. So it starts in the runway, of course, is first, then you see the hotels, and then you see it come down into residential, and it just cascades down. But then what's happening in the world makes you crave certain colors and feel right at certain times. So I'm sure you guys see that all the time in fashion.
Yes.
I was looking at some data, from the Department of Commerce, where they said in the 1980s, on average, the typical household spent about 6% of their family income on apparel. The more recent numbers are about 3%. And we know some reasons for that. We had luxury fibers in the 80s, the per unit cost was higher. Also, we have more ways to spend our money now. Not just things, more experiences. Do you see anything coming in the future that could get the average consumer more interested in fashion, to participate in the fashion process, and not just say, not so important, my t-shirt and my yoga pants will be fine for all occasions? Is there anything that you see happening that could drive excitement?
That's a great question. I think new and uniqueness is something that has been lost a lot right now in fashion, and people feel it. Like if you go into the mall, you look around, wow, like I saw this 3 years ago. Literally, I've seen pieces in the mall for sale right now that I had in high school. I'm like, what? And I know fashion comes around again, but so things have gotten a little bit boring. So there's like a little bit of that staleness where I think, again, this ability to offer inventory from new and unique perspectives, or products from new and unique perspectives, will make people more excited, because a lot of purchases happen on impulse. They happen because you fall in love. In terms, so that's kind of my soft answer. My more business-y answer would be, we have been approached by people to start being able to offer products sold on kind of like credit, or for maybe the suggestion for younger buyers who don't have as much discretionary income all at once, to be able to buy in installments. So for price pieces that are a bit higher up there, they can kind of pay monthly until they hit the retail price. So that's one option. Yeah, I think those are my two examples.
I think people are going to be spending money in virtual reality on virtual fashion products, as well as spending money on wearables for participating in virtual reality. So I can see an increase in that market. And what I mean by that is, I can't give you the data right off the top of my head, the actual stat, but there's supposed to be a huge increase in people spending money on clothing that deliver a more real than real experience in virtual reality. So gloves with haptics in them. I know it sounds all very Ready Player One, but this is the future apparently. And I also see a huge market for digital products, like I was saying. So not only do people want to dress themselves, and maybe we have enough clothes. Like maybe that's why the spending has gone down, or maybe it's because, like you were saying, the cost per item is a lot smaller these days because of fast fashion. But I think that we're going to want to dress our avatars in the future. And if you look to what's happening in Kim Kardashian's Hollywood and Second Life, there is a whole market of people spending money on virtual goods, real money. And so if this fashion world has become so saturated, then we'll go to the digital one.
Yes. Is there anything that the fashion industry thinks about or can do to make it easier to keep a handle on our cell phones and earbuds, make that more attractive to wear with color so that people are open to wearing it on their person? How can the fashion industry help us keep a handle on our cell phones so they don't get misplaced? We're always using them. It seems like they should be worn on our person.
Yeah, I think that's where we're going. I think that we're not quite ready for that yet. And when I say ready, I mean just in terms of the adoption. Like we had Google Glass years ago, but people were afraid of it. It was aesthetically ugly, and it was a little bit too in your face, on your face, literally. But like human-computer interfacing is happening, and the phone is an extension of the self, so it would make sense that all this is embedded into our clothing in the future. I think we're getting there. I think we are carrying our technology, then we're going to wear our technology, and eventually we're going to become indistinguishable from our technology as people and as bodies. I think we're going there. But in terms of making it easier to hold your cell phone, I've seen those like rings that you can attach to your cell phone that make it like easier to actually handle. But I don't think mobile computing is like the be-all and end-all of how we're going to interact with the web. So for example, like, there's a jacket out there that'll help you navigate a new city, and it has haptics in the shoulders, so instead of looking down at your phone trying to read your Google map, you plug in the destination, and then the jacket will vibrate on the shoulders depending on which way you need to turn. So I think things like that are useful and are kind of coming into reality. But it's just a matter of people being comfortable with the adoption of that and with wearing their technology, and with the manufacturing being able to keep up, because we can put electronics into textiles now, but it's difficult to wash. It's, there's a lot of complications with it. So we're getting there.
On that note, what about the health implications of wearing that much technology around you at all times?
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of the devices out there still have to pass testing that your cell phone would have to pass, and some of the devices that I use every day have less frequencies in them than your smartphone. So I think we're going to have that conversation. I think it starts with the smartphone. We're holding it up to our ear the whole time. But I don't see that as my role in wearable technology or in fashion technology. I'm always like a champion of this future, and I definitely do think that there are health conversations to be had, and I think that I'll leave it to those people to kind of raise those concerns.
So you mentioned that Gen Z is connecting with nature more than maybe previous generations. They're just feeling like they want to be. Did I hear that right?
They're more purposeful driven.
Okay.
Yeah, but overall, like even boomers are connecting with nature more too. Like there's an overall need.
I'm just wondering if you are seeing, or if any of you are seeing any sort of data that suggests that people are trying to maybe distance themselves more from the technology. So we're talking about, wearing it and getting more integrated with it. Is there a point where people go, no, that's too much, sort of like Black Mirror implants?
Right,
do we need to back off, and what is that point?
Yeah, I mean, I've read where people have said 3 hours without your cell phone is like drinking one of the smoothies with, spinach and kale and everything in it. Like, it's almost as effective. So I think there's that panic of, oh my gosh, I don't know where my phone is, and then there's that sense of like, wow, I can't be disturbed for like whatever, 5 minutes or whatever. So I think there's both. Like, we want to be completely connected. Like, every time you get off, or your plane lands, like everyone grabs their phone. Like, what did I miss in an hour? And they're all like frantic to find out. But then I think there's that feeling of wanting to be disconnected too. Now, I have found that there's some generations that, even the younger generation that grew up with a lot more technology than my generation, that need to listen to music to fall asleep, or like they need a lot of stimulation around them to they can't have complete quiet, and I find that interesting too. So I think it's both. Like, I think boomers are driving because they're pushing their generation, like they're Woodstock. They're like not going to put up with the way senior living is today. Now the senior living is looking like a Marriott because the boomers are entering into that part, and there's all different types of things happening where I think disconnecting from that constant, what do you call it, permanent agitation. I read it is. It's like constantly being agitated, and it's not good for you. Like, you can't be creative. I don't know. An artist, I really think, like, I look at artists creating things now, like, you have to put it away. Like, there's no way you can create if you're constantly being interrupted.
You always see people taking a social media break. I just feel like I see that constantly now, so I was just curious if there was any.
Yeah. Like, keep those spaces in between things. Like, try to have those. They're important.
One last question.
Can I have a yes in the...
That's how I was taught. My name is Serenity, and my question's for 19th Amendment specifically. So you talk about not inventory.
Yes.
And I'm very conscious about the origins of my clothing. I'm starting to become more conscious and to encourage my friends to do the same. But how do you compete with people who want something to wear like tonight, but maybe they can't get that from what you offer?
Well, we don't.
Okay.
I mean, if you really want something tonight, then hopefully there's a boutique open right now. But yeah, so I mean, the way that we think about a lot of our customers on 19th, like I would say the secondary customers, which are shoppers that shop, are the designers that sell on our platform. And I should mention, not all designers sell. The platform is really built for the making piece, but the sell is kind of on top of it. They think of it more of fashion as kind of patronage. So like the original patrons of like Coco Chanel in Paris, where you'd go in and you'd see what she presented, and you'd pre-order it then, and she'd make it in her atelier, and she'd deliver it to your door in maybe like 4 weeks. I don't know how long. But so it's more of that experience of having a connection with the designer, and again, like you were mentioning, knowing where it's coming from, knowing a little bit more about the process. And once someone places an order on the platform, they get updates along the way as it's being produced. So they're actually taken through the journey of the manufacturing process. So there's a lot more of a connection. And what we actually see is our e-commerce return rates are as low as 7% on average, which is very, very low for e-commerce, because you've got that additional layer of this communication, this education that's happening around what your product you're ordering. Basically, you fall in love with it, it's made for you. It's literally made for you. And so, like, we're not going to compete with, like, you know, the person that forgot their underwear when they packed and had to go buy underwear, and we're not going to compete with Amazon pack of 3 white t-shirts, and we're not going to compete with, you know, you just found out you got to go to a wedding tonight kind of a thing. You got to buy a dress. We're really more, it's more of kind of that artist connection, that connection with the designer, that the mission, the values behind the process. Yeah.
And to help wrap up this panel discussion tonight, one last final question, especially as we continue to think about the future of fashion. And you actually mentioned it a little bit just now, with how do you think creators, such as artists, designers, marketers, and people on the build side, for instance, here at TrueFib, we will utilize cross-functional development, meaning the designers are not sitting over here and then tossing their design over the wall to the developers to code away, and the developers are thinking, I don't know why they designed it this way, but I also just keep coding. Instead, they're sitting right across from each other and collaborating that way. So how do you think the creators and the builders can either, if you feel they're working well together now, what are they doing that they should continue to do? Or how can they work better together to positively impact the fashion industry and the world?
And again, a little bit different from the paint part of it, but I was just on consultation with Rizzo today, and we were talking to the customer, and I think just listening to the customer for what they want, because we influence trends as much as trends influence us. Like, in order for a trend to get traction, it has to represent what we want, so we have to know what our customers want, and I think that even though there's so much like digital and so much, I still think that personal connection and seeing and hearing what a customer wants can give you a better product in the end.
Yeah, so we're probably a little bit, so you're talking kind of like the makers of I'm trying to use the metaphor of software development. So for us, my co-founder is a designer. We believe in the artistic vision, like we were talking about, of the designer. So not necessarily a top-down trend, but it's coming from something inside a designer that has a creative thought. The difference that we see is some designers have training, some don't, and so we try and provide a way to help all designers get the product they want made and brought to life. So there's kind of two stages of this product development versus all the decisions are made, their product is where they want it to go, let's go and put it up for sale. And so in that way you have kind of the creative vision, which is designer, head of brand, and then you have either technical design people that support that, or they're kind of a unicorn and they're very good at everything technical and design, and they also have great creative vision and they can do everything themselves. But yeah, did I answer your question? I'm like,
I'd love to think apply it to 19th Amendment.
I mean, yeah, I think maybe the more interesting example though is I think like Amanda and my relationship, where she really came in with the fashion knowledge and I came in with the more product process tech knowledge, and we went through basically very early iterations of 19th Amendment, and I was like, we don't have to tell people this should be obvious, like, or this is a standard business practice, you know, we don't need a fax, whatever, you know, people will know what this means, sort of thing. I came from like the venture tech world, so everything seems obvious, but then, you know, constantly was being told by Amanda, you know, actually, most of these manufacturers don't have a computer in their place of business. They only have a telephone. They don't even have a fax machine, or maybe they just have a fax machine and a telephone. So there has to be a way to print stuff. Why would you ever print stuff? So stuff like that, where you've got kind of this one industry, one side of makers that's like all in on the tech side. And as a consumer, we're pretty tech focused at this point, but then as an industry, fashion is still very much hands-on, it's tactile, people are touching your clothes, and they very rarely interface with software to make it. So I think that dynamic is really interesting. And I'll stop.
Oh boy, last story. I don't know if this answers the question, but I think that collaboration is key in any industry right now, with fashion and technology in particular. You need designers, you need technologists, you need them at the same table to produce a good wearable, good fashion tech product, a good retail technology product, but also that co-collaboration with the consumer I think is very important. Social media has given a voice to consumers and you should listen to them. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great. Well, Amanda, Gemma, Dee, thank you so much for joining us this evening, and a round of applause